And welcome back. Now, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has announced the appointment of Jabu Mabuza as interim executive chair for power utility Eskom, and he will also be the acting group chief executive officer of Eskom Holdings. Now, Mabuza will assume the acting group CEO position for the next 3 months until the board finds a suitable candidate. Phakamani Radebe resigned from this position in May this year after serving for just over a year. And to discuss these developments and others around Eskom further, I'm joined now by Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi, who is the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Sakeda. Thanks for having us.
And yet again, we're talking Eskom. So what do these new developments indicate to us as far as trying to find a solution to the Eskom problem is?
Let me start with the first point. There is nothing wrong when a company appoints a chairperson to act as an acting CEO over a limited period of time. That have happened before. This is unusual. This is not unusual. And this is acceptable under normal circumstances. But Eskom is not our normal circumstances, isn't it? Eskom is going to report that it have lost a 25 billion rands. It's not a first loss. It's a conservative loss over every financial year. Under normal circumstances, Jabu Mabuza and the entire board, including all of the senior executives, would have been asked to step down and to save our country from further losses. But this is South Africa for you, a country where we thrive on mediocrity, where we think that there's absolutely nothing wrong when companies that are the core of maintaining our economy deposit losses that are record-breaking. I mean, to lose 25 billion rands in one financial year breaks all of the previous record in terms of the losses in the state-owned enterprises. To us, that's the first issue that we should be looking at. The second issue, Eskom was established in 1923, over a period of 7 decades to 8. You can't tell me that this company have no systems, have no capacity inside itself that whenever there is a departure of a CEO, you cannot find just one person inside to act for 3 months whilst you are searching for a more suitable position. If you think that you'd have nothing inside to go scratch outside and find something. I think that this is an abnormal situation, and it explains why we have a 25 billion rand loss in the first place.
So this 25 billion rand loss, you said that we thrive on mediocrity as a country, as a nation. Who's to blame for that? And was that inevitable? Could anything have been done to perhaps reduce those losses in any way?
We need to hear the full report that they're going to publish in order to find out why a massive 25 billion rand loss. But on its own, that headline, anywhere in the world, in a democratic world, in established democracies, will say, firstly, the minister concerned must leave, because the question will be, where was the minister that will have ensured that the company is steered not to the direction of massive losses?
But I ask the same question in this regard. Could the minister possibly have done anything at all to avert these losses?
Exactly. Why is he a minister? Why are these people being appointed to look after the interest of South Africa, but they are looking after the interest of South Africa leads to one SOE, one that is the most important, critical one for the economy, to undergo losses after losses at such an expense to our economy. We have seen an economy declining by a 3.2%, which is a second record loss in terms of a growth opportunity in the 25 years of our democracy. And we've seen 200,000 jobs being lost in the first quarter of this year. Today, Statistics South Africa is going to publish yet another statistics that we are certain will paint to a worsening economic situation facing South Africa. In the midst of all of that, you then have an SOE that not only deposits a loss of 25 billion, but then that gets a person who was steering the ship under those circumstances to be affirmed and be given a position to hunt for a better one. And this is the anomaly. And this is, I was sharing you a joke about what is circulating in the social media about what other people think about Africa when we are dealing with a situation of a dead horse. We find a whip. And we ask the very dead horse to go and find the better horse when the one that we actually have is dead. And we praise our dead horse and we keep on hogging it. And this is us, unfortunately, in South Africa. We're feeding in all of to the negative narrative about Africa. In fact, we normally say that the best people who feed into the root of racism is us when we do all of these shenanigans of appointing people who have dismally failed, and we give them even bigger responsibility to continue to drive the very same companies to the ground.
So when it comes to Eskom, do we have solutions as a country? Does anyone have a viable solution to the Eskom problem as it stands right now?
I don't think so. The government knows what it is doing, frankly. Let's look at the history in the recent years. How many times have we changed the CEOs? If you are there for more than 12 months, that's a record-breaking, longest-serving CEO. In not only, by the way, at Eskom, but including here at SABC and everywhere else. Secondly, how many boards have we seen? And thirdly, how many times have we heard the previous president appointing the current president as the person who's going to oversee the ship and make sure that the state-owned enterprises are developed to play their developmental role in the economy? When this deputy president became the president, he still appoints the deputy to steer the ship. And then we get told that Eskom is going to be broken down into 3 pieces. It doesn't make sense to us whatsoever. And then thirdly, we hear that we're going to have a restructuring officer in addition to the task team of the cabinet, to the board, to the CEO, and to the executives that are supposed to be running the company. Can't you see that this is the government that doesn't know what it is doing?
So with regard to the unbundling, because the restructuring officer would obviously be instrumental and very key to overseeing that particular process, are you still opposed to the unbundling of the utility?
We are absolutely certain that the unbundling of Eskom is a nice word for privatization have to come as the only solution to all of these faltering state-owned enterprises. This restructuring officer, in our view, is nothing but a privatization officer that is going to make sure that eventually that family silver is handed over to the highest bidder internationally. And that's why we were worried about how the government simply rushed the whole introduction of these independent power producers. And we always have suspicions about the conflict of interest, about the family connections between these IPPs and the presidency. And a lot of people have spoken and pointed out that conflict of interest. And that's why, by the way, we are quite...
What exactly is the conflict of interest?
That conflict, people were asking a question, and that question is a valid question. The president is the president. The Minister of Energy at the time is the brother-in-law of the president. And one of the biggest beneficiaries out of the IPP program becomes the brother-in-law of both the minister and the president. And people were saying that, hold on, just imagine if the same scenario was to happen under President Zuma, the whole media will be at war. That will become headlines. But in South Africa, we have double standards. If the media loves you, those things get suppressed. including the conflict of interest of Jabu Mabuza himself, which he disclosed in the Zondo Commission. For God's sake, his company is maintaining a third of Eskom's boilers. And South Africa, because he's a darling of today, sees that as no problem as long as it discloses and it then tells the country that I've put this into a blind trust. I'm no longer taking an active part in deciding the future investment of not only this interesting sphere, but also you have a brother-in-law that is running a big business of contract of coal with Eskom. Now, anywhere else, you have to say, hold on, what is all of this array of conflict of interest involving people in a very high up positions, and yet we're looking at the other side? Is this not how the whole state capture began from the beginning, when we allowed the previous minister, Malusi Gigaba, to systematically put up Gupta stooges in all of the state-owned enterprises? 9 years after doing that, it was too late, and that's why Eskom is now in such a crisis. SABC and Dinel can't pay its staff. SABC is threatening to offload 2,200 people, and then you can go on and on about how South Africa have really suffered under those circumstances, and that's why we're raising a flag. This conflict of interest have to be probed, and South Africa has to be concerned, not just about the fact that the very persons who are implicated in that are now given higher positions to act as CEOs, but about the fact that this seems to be going very high up in the echelons of power.
How should it be probed and by whom?
We welcome the fact that the public protector have written a letter to Eskom to say, hold on, we want to have a look at this. And we hope that that office, not necessarily the advocate Mkwebana, who's on the ropes in the court, but that office of the public protector will go and investigate why, for example, the IPPs were rushed and why they were just forced down our throats without any consultation with the unions, with the communities of Mpumalanga who are going to be negatively impacted upon when 5 power stations will eventually be closed, leading to a 90 to 120,000 jobs lost in the Mpumalanga province alone.
Some might ask, what do you mean by rushed? What do you mean that the process was
consultation, no consultation whatsoever, no meaningful consultation. The only time then the Minister of Public Enterprises began to at least have discussions with both the NUMSA and the NUM was after the fact, after the announcements have been made, after all of the 27 contracts have been signed with these IPPs. We smelled a rot at that time, and we're so happy that someone else have complained, and the Public Protector's Office is beginning to look at that issue.
So what is the solution to the Eskom problem? Do we have the requisite skill set in South Africa? Is there someone that we can call upon today, or a few people who can go in there and actually turn around the fortunes of this ailing power utility that is a veritable black hole at the moment?
If this country of 57 million people cannot find one person credible enough with requisite skills and experience to steer that ship of Eskom away from the current losses, then this country must close down.
But help us, as NUMSA, as one of the leading unions here, have you identified anybody? Is there someone that you can recommend that could step up and perhaps bring a difference here?
Frankly, I don't know. Sitting here, I wouldn't be able to answer your question and say so-and-so and so-and-so can do this thing. We are amazed that internally in Eskom there's no such a capacity. I mean, after 80 years of its existence, it can't find a person inside to steer the ship. That's quite amazing. And secondly, we can't just believe that in South Africa we can't find a person not conflicted, a person of integrity, and a person who will be trusted inside and outside Eskom to drive this ship out of the current black hole that it's finding itself in.
So just to end it off, bottom line it, the appointment now of Jabu Mabuza as the acting CEO, in addition to his role as the executive board chair. What do you make of that?
We are, whilst it is not illegal, but we're not supporting that. Surely we have to look at it in the context of this 25 billion rands which Eskom have lost under the leadership of Jabu Mabuza. And based on that, we think that it is a no-no. If Eskom doesn't have an internal capacity, well, it should have that capacity to start with. It's not a company that have a succession plan, which is quite worrying. As a company of that magnitude can't find and prepare people inside. Where is chief financial officers? Where is the CEO, COO? Where are all of these executives? Is there none of them that can resume a responsibility just for 3 months? We're quite amazed and ashamed, to say the least.
Well, Mr. Vavi, thank you so much. And that, of course, Mr. Zwelinzima Vavi, the General Secretary of SAFTU, speaking to us about the latest developments at Eskom. And that brings us up to news time at 7 with Leanne.